Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is your girl Simone Nicole, back at it again with another video. In today's video we are going to be talking about searching for apartments as a young person. This video is going to be really good for those of us that are searching for apartments for the very first time, and especially for those of us that are searching for apartments for the very first time out of state like I. If you guys are new here, I am moving to Atlanta. I would have already been in Atlanta, but Miss Corona decided to interrupt my plans, so myself and my roommate had to put our move on hold. But we had our apartment picked out and we were very much so ready to move at the very beginning of this month, but those plans have been put on hold. I thought about not doing this video until I got into my apartment and I was settled, but I want to get this information out as soon as possible because I believe that the market is going to be a lot cheaper right now because we are not in the best place as a country economically. And if you can afford to get an apartment right now, I think that it will be a good time to invest in one because they're cheaper than they usually are. I know that to be the case for me for sure because my apartment is about $200 cheaper than it was when we were first about to move. So I figure since we're all in the house and we have nothing but ample time to do research into the things that I'm going to talk to you all about today, figure why not? We might as well film it, and then I will definitely be filming follow-up videos. This is more of an overview of what you need to do to prepare to get the apartment, and I will talk briefly about finding the perfect apartment, but that's going to be an entire separate video in and of itself. Now, before we get into the video, we have to do our subscriber shout out of the day. And today's subscriber shout out is going to go to Miss Jessica Sue. She commented on my apartment hunting on a budget in Atlanta video, which I will have linked right here. And she said, "I'm moving here next month. This video was super helpful. Keep them coming." And you know, Jessica, you said that 5 months ago, and 5 months ago was when I first posted that video, and I really haven't updated you all on my move besides in passing in a video. So I wanted to sit down and do this video as a part of keeping them coming so that I can give you all of the information that I have gathered over this past year in prepping to move. If you would like to hear my very detailed thoughts on how to prepare to move out as a young 20-something, please keep on watching. The first thing that you want to focus on is figuring out what market you are moving into. If you are moving into a big city, your LA's, your New York's, your Atlanta's, your New Orleans, huge cities, then you need to do a lot of research into the type of market that you are moving into. This will include how much do apartments usually run, how expensive is it to live in the city where you want to be. Is it a lot less cheaper to live 10, 15, 20 miles outside of the city, or is it more worth it for you to stay inside of said city? How is the traffic? Do you need to work close to your job, or can you afford to work further away because the traffic isn't that bad? Is it a touristy location? Do they have more rentals or more houses? Because that's definitely going to determine how much money you pay in rent. You need to study the market in which you are moving into, similarly to how you would do it for a job. You always study the market if you are moving from one place to another when you're looking for a job, when you go and interview for that job, so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into and you seem very well educated to the person that is interviewing you. It's the exact same thing for apartments. Now, once you have that down, you need to start looking into the specific area in which you want to move. I will use myself for example and talk about Atlanta. Now, Georgia, of course, is its own state, but Atlanta is the Mecca, and I'm moving there for professional reasons. I am an actor. I got my degree in theater performance. I currently live in Cleveland. I'm ready to get out of here. It's not what I want. I needed to figure out where I could afford to move. When I first started off this journey, I was living by myself, but now I have a roommate, and I will get into explaining why I chose to get a roommate. When I first started looking into where I should move, I started out by doing a simple Google search. The thing about Atlanta, and I can't speak to other cities, is that it seems to be a place where you have to talk to locals. I cannot tell you all how helpful it was to me in my case that I posted 2 different videos on shopping for apartments in Atlanta, and the comments are full of people warning me against the apartments that I was talking about that appeared to be nice on the outside, and I may have had like some hesitations about them, but the people in the comment section had 0 hesitation, 0 chill, and they told me exactly what was up. So you need to figure out where you want to move and what the goal of the place that you are moving to is. So for me, I've grown up in the suburbs my entire life. I am not comfortable being in somewhere that is the hood, ghetto, whatever you want to call it. I'm not comfortable with places like that. I don't need to be stuck in the middle of suburbia, but I also don't want to live in a place where I can't walk from my car to my front door without feeling like someone is going to attack me. And judging from the comments in the video that I posted, that's not an outlandish belief to have. I didn't realize that, and I realized that because I talked to locals and people that actually lived around there. In addition to that, I was talking to friends that I have down there, which is a great advantage. If you don't have these types of advantages, take advantage of Facebook. There are a ton of Facebook groups for a million different reasons, and if you just search the city that you're moving to, I'm sure that you could go into a Facebook group about safety. Safety in Atlanta, safety in Houston, safety in wherever. If you're able to see the group publicly, then great, but you could also join it and then be able to read what people are saying, and you'll get a good indication of what cities are safer than others. In addition to talking about safety, which is a big concern for me because I am a lone female, not saying that you can't be a lone male and still be scared, but the point is that I'm on high alert. How far away can you be from your job? Do you already have a job? If you know where your job is, how bad is the traffic? Are you okay with commuting 40-45 minutes in order to have a cheaper apartment? Or do you find it necessary to stay inside of the city? All of these are extremely important questions that you need to ask yourself before you even start looking for the apartment that you care to live in. So the next topic that I want to hit on is finances, and this could definitely be a whole video in and of itself. I want to talk about developing a great, stable amount of income in your savings account, in your checking account, and in your emergency fund. You want to have the presence of all 3. A good savings account to fall back on, and also an emergency fund. Your emergency fund should ideally consist of at least 3 to 6 months of all of your bills. All of the cost of your bills should be inside of that safety net. So say if anything happens and you move and you need to pull from that, you're not pulling from your savings, you're pulling from your emergency fund. So the way that you kind of want to think about it is, if you want to have $10,000 before you move and you want to include your safety net in there, let's say that you need $2,000 for your safety net. That means, are you actually going to be saving $12,000 or are you going to be saving $8,000? And I know when I say big numbers like that, it seems like a lot, but I will get into explaining why that is really not a lot of money at all. Well, it is a lot of money in like the grand scheme of things, but when you're talking about moving out of a house that you've probably known your whole life, you are probably not paying the same amount of bills that you are going to be paying. And in addition to that, you're going to be moving completely to another state. Prayerfully, you have family in that other state, but I myself do not. So it is imperative of me to have a good safety net to fall back on, because I am playing with my credit. If anything happens, just like this whole COVID thing happened, you want to make sure that you have something to fall back on. Now, in talking about those big numbers, the $8,000 to $10,000, you need to learn to budget. I know that we are young. I'm going to assume if you're watching this video that you're on the young side. I just turned 24 years old. I have been wanting to move out since I graduated college, but I was not financially ready until I would say about 6 months ago. And the reason why I became financially ready is because I started budgeting like nobody's business. And I wasn't very good at budgeting at first. I knew I needed to have a savings account, like I understood that mentally. I found myself putting money into my savings account just to take it right back out, and eventually my bank ended up dissolving my savings account because I was treating it like a checking account. So what I actually did was that I went to my bank and I asked them to close my savings account, and I was going to open a savings account at a bank that I didn't have a card for, that would require me to physically go there and put in money and take out money. Now that is also an option that I would definitely recommend to you if you have trouble saving. But what the person advised me to do was actually to take my savings account off of my hub when I log into my bank account. So when you log onto your banking app, you have every single account that you have with that said bank. What we did was take my savings account off of that so I couldn't see it, and because of that I had absolutely no idea what was in it, and I had no way to transfer money in and transfer money out. The only way that I was getting money in and out is if I physically showed up to the bank during business hours and took that money out. That was absolutely transformative for me for saving. I had never been able to save money before that, and I believe that making that change was what helped me along in that process. In addition to that, I sat down, I'm going to show you guys like my actual physical planner. I sat down and I wrote out every single bill that I had. This is what my planner generally looks like, which is crazy. I have every single solitary bill that I have mapped out on here. I have all the big ones on here, like your car note, your rent, your phone bill, your insurance, stuff like that, all the way down to the subscription service that I use to edit my thumbnails for YouTube, all the way down to the amount of gas that I need every single week. Every single thing is a part of my budget, and it's broken down weekly because I'm a server, so I constantly have cash on me. So coming up with such a specific budget was again transformative for me because it was able to help me see how much money I am spending right now. And the amount of money that I'm spending right now and the bills that I have right now are going to 100% translate to the bills I'm going to have when I move into my apartment. I will pay more money in rent, and I will now pick up utilities. And now because of that, I had to look at the way that I was spending, and I had to be responsible with the way that I was spending. It is not responsible for you to say, you know what, while I live with my peoples, I have a budget to myself that I spend on whatever I want after my bills are paid of $500 a month. And then for you to say, but I want an apartment that would put me in a place where I only had an additional $100 a month to spend on myself. Is that realistic?
No. No.
Have that talk with yourself, and then you'll be able to see how much rent you are able to afford. But we'll get there in 1 second. The reason why budgeting is such a big deal is because you are going to be in a place that is all your own, with your own name on it. And if you have a roommate, it's your roommate's name on it too. You're growing and you're taking this next big step in life. So the last thing you want to do is mess it up for yourself. You want to be so stable and so meticulous about the way that you do your bills, the way that you budget, knowing every single thing that is coming in and out of your accounts, everything. You need to get really good at this before you move out, not after. It's going to be very, very hard for you to stick to a strict budget for yourself in the first place if you're like me. Trying to do that after you move out is just a lot, and I totally wouldn't recommend it. Now next, let's talk about how much rent you are actually able to afford. When we're talking about the amount of rent that you can afford, ideally you are not spending any more than 1/3 of the amount of money that you bring in on rent. That is always ideal. If you're living in places like LA, New York, Miami, where the prices are for rentals are exorbitantly high because in those markets, rentals and apartments are way more common than houses. These places are extremely big for young people, and what do young people love to do? They love to rent. So if rent is going to take up 1/3 of your income, you also have to factor in your utilities and your auxiliaries, which is something that a lot of apartment complexes add on and kind of slip in there without really telling you. Your auxiliaries are going to be your trash pickup, your sewage, your amenities fees for the gym, the pool, all of that stuff. All of that cute little stuff that they're showing you during the tour is 100% because you are paying for it. They just add it as a fee to your rent called auxiliaries, and they group it all together. Do you have a dog? Do you have to pay dog rent? Do you have to pay a dog deposit? And then in addition to that, you're talking about utilities. Is your apartment gas and electric? Or is it only gas or only electric? Do you pay your apartment for your cable, or do you have to set that up yourself? There are so many things that you need to figure out that are going to go into that 1/3. Do you want that 1/3 to be the literal amount of money that you are paying? If they say that this apartment is $1,200 a month to rent out, do you want to pay $1,200 a month for rent plus utilities and auxiliaries, or do you want to pay $1,200 for it all? Because if you want to pay $1,200 for it all, then that means that you need to bring down the amount of rent money that you are willing to spend. If you have a budget to spend $1,200 on an apartment a month, but that's it, then that means that your rent needs to be around $900 to $1,000 to allot for all of the other things on top of that. So that is 110% something to think about. Now that we have talked about the realities of how much money it takes to rent a place, can you actually afford it? When we're talking about the area that you want to move into, the way that you want to live, can you afford to live that way? For me personally, the answer was no. I could not afford to live the way that I personally wanted by myself. So I looked into getting a roommate. If you don't want to get a roommate, then that means that you are going to have to change either the amount of income that you are making, maybe pick up a second job, maybe pick up a third job, maybe pick up a side hustle, or you're gonna want to stay at home for longer and rack up your savings account. But even doing that could be tricky because a lot of apartments require for you to make 3 to 3.5 times the rent. For me, I'm a server. I don't make a steady amount of money every single month. So what I did was that I asked my company that I work for how to look for my pay stubs, because I don't get physical pay stubs mailed to me because I don't get any money via a paycheck. So I figured out how to do that, and then I went back and looked at my past 3 or 4 pay stubs, because that's what the apartment that I was looking into and settled on told me that they would do. So I looked at that and I looked at how much money I made on average, and then after I did that, I totaled that up over 4 months. If I looked at 4 different monthly stubs, then I totaled all that up, and then I figured out how much I averaged monthly or bi-weekly, or maybe even weekly, child. I think I did weekly, so that I would be able to tell approximately how much money I make. And because I figured that out, I was able to figure out how much rent I was actually able to afford without just coming up with a random number in my head, so that I knew I was hitting that good 1/3 ratio. And also so that whenever I went to these apartments, I wouldn't get turned down because I wasn't making enough money. If you work at a job where it is tip-based, you cannot just assume that you make enough money. You have to go through and see how much money you're actually making on average to make sure that you're making not only the amount of money that you think you're making in your head, but actually what you are making. So even if you have a fat savings account, some apartment complexes will work with you with that as long as you provide bank statements, but a lot won't. A lot want to see that money coming in. I got a roommate, and my roommate is someone that I have known since I was literally 10 years old, and we just so happened to want to move to Atlanta at the same time and figured that we might as well do it together. We're actually both artists, so we have a very, very similar idea of what we want our apartment to look like, the creative space that we want to have in said apartment, so that works out really well. If you don't have that luxury, then you definitely want to look into getting on, again, Facebook, and going to the city that you want to move to and seeing if they have a housing group. Atlanta definitely has one, and before I found Deja, I was in that group looking around to see who needed a roommate, and then once I saw somebody that I kind of like, I would stalk them and make sure that they weren't crazy. But that is very risky and very scary, to move in with a complete stranger to a completely new city. It could work out really well, or maybe it won't. The advice that I have for you is to, if you're religious, 110% pray on it. If you're not religious, then really sit with it and figure out what energy you get back to you from putting it out into the universe. And if you are religious, pray about it to God and ask him to speak to you in plain English and send you a sign, because I promise you he will speak back. Also, some advice for when you're looking for a roommate in one of those service or one of those Facebook groups: be very, very clear about what you want. Say where you're coming from, how much money you are willing to spend a month, and what type of relationship you want with the person that is living with you. For me, if I'm living for a stranger, I don't mind being your friend, but I don't want to be best friends. It's just my personality. If a friendship develops organically, then okay, but I did not want a roommate to be a built-in friend. That just wasn't a goal for me. If that is a goal for you, then please, please say it, because there are other people that feel the same way that you do, but on the other side, there are a lot of people that feel the same way that I do. Okay, so now you have gone through all the previous steps that we've talked about, and it's time to find the apartment of your dreams. I will 110% make a separate video that is dedicated to talking about how to find your very, very, very best and favorite apartment. But to give you guys just a handful of tips, I am going to stress that you cannot jump into anything unless you are placed in a situation where your job is requiring for you to move for whatever reason and you have to make a fast move. I would 110,000% not recommend moving into an apartment in another state, especially one that you have not seen. Which brings me to my next point. You need to fly out and see these apartments. I have visited Atlanta more times than I can count at this point, and a lot of the visits are specifically to look at apartments. And it's funny because when I'm talking to the leasing agent and they ask me why I'm out there, I'm like, to look for apartments, and they're like,
you flew all the way out here just to look at apartments?
And I'm like, yes, so that I could see this apartment in person and see if all the reviews talking about how y'all have roaches are actually true. Don't play with me. Don't play with me. Don't let nobody play with you, okay? Period. You need to fly down there to whatever city you're trying to move to, and you need to get a feel for the neighborhood that you think that you want to move into. Because there was neighborhoods that plenty of people recommended to me, and I got down there and I said,
the ghetto! The ghetto!
Couldn't be me. And what would I have done if I had looked at all this stuff virtually online and then just decided, oh yeah, I'm gonna move in? Do not let your want and your will to get out of your parents' house, and I can't stand them, and this is such a horrible environment. Do not let that end up putting you in an even worse situation. You can't, they've been moving with me this whole time. You can afford to put your move on hold for 6 months or a year while you do research on the apartments that you want to move into. You can do that. What I actually like to do is to go on like a kayak on a private browser. By the way, just a pro tip, because they won't track how many times you've been to the site and therefore show you inflated prices of flights, just in case you didn't know if they do that. I get on kayak and I just say that my dates are flexible and I look for the cheapest time to fly out and I book that ticket. I've gotten to and from Atlanta for $80, which isn't that uncommon. Atlanta is actually very cheap to fly into, and I take 3 or 4 days to solely tour apartments, and that is it. I've done it so many times. I've ran through so many different options of apartments, and I've visited more apartments than I can physically count on my hands. Once I got there, and like I said, I got a feel for the neighborhood, I got a feel for the whole community overall. Once I found an apartment that I truly really loved, I talked to someone that lived there. Oftentimes people are walking their dogs, they're out by the pool. Go to someone that looks approachable and that you feel safe talking to, preferably in the daytime, and ask them about how they like living there. There was a couple of apartments that I really loved, and because of that I stopped someone that lived there to talk to them about it, and they didn't have many favorable things to say about the property management, which is a huge thing in Atlanta. Besides like bugs, property management is the top complaint of people at these apartment complexes. So it's very important to me to talk to someone that lives there, because some people will leave reviews because they mad because they didn't get their first and last month's rent back, and some people will genuinely leave reviews because they had a horrible experience there. So in order to weed out the fake from the real, you have to talk to somebody that lives there, preferably a couple of people if you can get it, but that's going to be the best way for you to figure out if this place is viable for you to live. After all that is said and done, if you cannot find an apartment that you love, do not settle. Wait. Be patient, because I can guarantee you that that apartment is out there for you. Maybe it's just not renovated yet. Maybe it's at full occupancy because everyone loves living there and you just have to wait for people to move out. Do not settle for an apartment just because you're in a rush. For these specific apartments, you will start to find there are income requirements, and yes, they do run your credit. That is very important to know. If you have evictions on your record, if you know that you don't pay your bills on time, if you've had some of your credit lines go into default, that will show up on your credit check. And some places even figure out how much you're going to pay for a security deposit based on your credit score. And because you are young, they're going to find every single reason to not rent to you, because young people historically just aren't as responsible of renters as older people. We don't have much of a credit history. We're just a risk overall. So you want to make sure that you go in there knowing that you can prove that you make 3 and sometimes 3.5 times the rent. And you want to make sure that once they run your credit is going to be A1. And then my very last point, which I have talked about so many times in this video, do not rush. If you feel the need to rush, it is not time for you to move, or maybe you need to figure out where to move to somewhere in between time. Do not rush into making commitments to a 12 or 13 month lease the next year of your life, because you just can't wait and you just have to get out of the situation that you're in. If you're in danger, that's a completely different story. But again, if it's just that you're annoyed with your current living situation, you have to stick it out and go through all of the things that we talked about today before you even think about moving out. I promise you it will benefit you in the long run. Okay, that is everything for this video. I hope that it was informative for you all. I tried to be as detailed as I could possibly be by just giving a quick rundown through the things that I felt were very valuable to know moving out of the house as a young 20-something, potentially to a whole other state. There's so much to talk about, so if I missed something in this video and you would like for me to address it further, please do not forget to leave it in the comments down below. If there's something that I missed, if there's something that you want me to elaborate further on, or if you have any thoughts or ideas or words of wisdoms for the fellow girlies that are moving out on their own, please make sure that you comment them down below, because we can just all support each other. I thank you all so much for watching and to listening to the opinion of little old me. And if you would like to see more videos like this, please give this video a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe on your way out. Remember to keep positivity in your life, because positivity breeds positivity, and we have absolutely no time for negativity in 2020. I will see you all in the next video. Bye. Oh wait, not bye. Watch my videos. Come on. Click them. Click them. They're here. They're ready. They're clickable. They're begging. Click them.